Okay, so welcome back to another lecture in the series of sensor arrays and imaging. In the last week we sort of completed the transmit side. So just to reiterate the journey, because it's always important that we are really understanding where we are and where we are heading to. So on that perspective, we started off our journey with waves, right? We studied the physics of waves in a very brief manner, not really detailed manner, just to get enough feel of the understanding perspective, because that will help us in signal processing, or already helping us in the signal processing aspect. Then we discussed about the transducers in a sort of an individual sense. We discussed about the axial lateral resolution, which are the key uh, factors for imaging. So how the transducer shape, size, uh, everything is going to, or the frequency of resonant frequency, everything is going to affect the axial lateral resolution, is what we discussed in some detail. And then of course we move to the array of sensors or array of transducers, which is sort of extremely important aspect, right? And hope everyone appreciate by now that what all you can do, what extra flexibility that you have when you have an array of sensors rather than a single sensor, or an array of transducers rather than a single transducer, right? Because it's extremely important. So from that perspective, the last session was all about the transmit side. So we did discuss about how we can change the direction of wave propagation. So we can literally make the direction oriented towards any direction in space by using the arrangement array of transducers, or array of antennas, also same thing. So the interesting aspect is we can focus, we can have plane wave transmission, we can have synthetic aperture transmission. So different ways to excite the, or to insonify, or to radiate the field in front of us, right? So there's many possibilities are there, and you can really use mix and match different varieties, right? I can do focusing as well as I can do directional or tilt in one direction, or a certain direction, right? So it's possible. So that is all on the transmit side. And of course the electronic side also, we had a brief discussion on the transmit side, and I will try to reiterate it again, because it's important to have that continuity. So we do have the arrangement of transducers or antennas here, and they are definitely excited by a digital signal in modern day imaging systems. So you do have a waveform, a digital waveform, which will be either delayed if it is a focus transmission, or tilted. So some delay adjustment you have to do so that it can be tilted or directed or focused. If it is plane wave, zero angle, doesn't matter, it's all zero here. So this is obviously again a control unit will be there to give the delay, so that the transducers or the antennas will be excited at different times or at same time, depending on the type of transmission. And then of course we can even shape the aperture. So always don't forget that the name aperture, it is nothing but the number of sensors that will be involved in the transmit or the receive at any given point of time. So in this case it's all about transmit. So I can even weight them, the signals at each of these antennas or transducers, I can weight them so that I can shape the beam pattern, right? So that's the idea. So always remember that the beautiful derivation that we did is like the beam pattern is having some dependence, right? It has some dependence on the shape of the transducer, or the shape of the aperture, or the aperture function. So it is nothing but the Fourier transform of the aperture function, right? So that's what we found out. And of course it is perfect at far field, but it will be distorted at the near field, but still the shape is preserved. There was a plot which we were seeing for a sort of rectangular transducer and a Gaussian shaped transducer, right? So we saw that the beam pattern is sort of similar throughout, except in near field there's a lot of disturbance. That's the only difference, right? So it's very important. So that is where these weights play a role. So that is on the transmit side. Now this week and maybe next week as well, we will discuss on the receive side, and typically we call it as the beam forming. In fact, the transmit also we can do focus transmission, and we already discussed that it is the transmit beam forming, but it is not there the beam forming became so popular. It is on the receive side the beam forming algorithm became very popular. Okay, so we'll discuss on that. So that's why the module is named as array beam forming, because we're going to actually do receive beamforming, and that too in digital. And some people call it as digital beamforming or software beamforming, because everything is literally implemented on a digital system. It can be an FPGA or ASIC or digital VLSI, I'm saying when I say ASIC, or it can be a CPU or GPU. Okay, so it doesn't matter, but on a digital system. Okay, so with that, let me actually introduce the general or generic receiver signal chain. So we saw the generic transmit signal chain here, and hope everyone is well versed with it. And now on the receive signal chain, it's something like from left to right to left. It is in this direction, so you should see, I purposefully put it because it's sometimes good to have some difference. So it is from this to this, okay, not the other way, typically way when we say left to right. Okay, so let's actually look into some details, each aspect of it. The first part is of course the reception, right? So this is the front. It can be an antenna, it can be a sensor. So now it is interesting. Now we can actually treat it an individual entity altogether. You don't need to have a transmit setup to go with the receive setup. Receive setup can be independent. I'll tell you some examples, like the camera. We already discussed, it has a receive setup, but it doesn't have a transmit setup like we discussed earlier. Then EEG, basically it's like a receive. ECG is another example. It's like a receive signal only, but it does have multiple electrodes, right? You have multiple electrodes in EEG, multiple electrodes in ECG, and people have attempted imaging using them. So that's a interesting part. Okay, so the receive part, you can actually treat it as a standalone aspect, but yeah, in many cases when we do the beamforming, we do consider the transmit aspect as well, if there is a transmit to go with it. Okay, so it's important, but we can even, most of these algorithms you can treat it as independent. It doesn't really require a transmit part to work with. Okay, so that's the idea I want to convey. Okay, so the receive signal chain, you need some antenna or some sensor or some transducer to sample the wave or the mechanical phenomena or the electrical phenomena which is happening in the medium, right? Because then only we can image that. So something is there in space, we need to sample that and then convert that to a time signal. That's what exactly happening. So the phenomena which is happening, which is actually on this side, is actually captured by the array of sensors. Let's call it a sensor to be generic, but you can relate that to an antenna or transducer, because if I use too many terms it will be difficult for us to really go forward, right? Let's use an array of sensors. So these sensors will sample the space and make time signals out of it, and that time signal is analog in nature. Okay, so analog, when I say, is if you're coming from electrical background, you're very comfortable with that. But if you're coming from computer science background, if you're not studied signals and systems and basically analog to digital conversion, I'm dedicating this lecture for that. So it's like a revisit to the analog to digital conversion as well. Okay, so the sensor will sample the space, the wave or the mechanical wave or the electromagnetic wave or whatever electric signal which is happening there in the medium. They're sampling it, and they are actually making an analog voltage signal or analog signal out of it. And then of course in many cases like ultrasound imaging or many other cases where we do depth imaging, we know that the intensity of the wave will get reduced at a certain depth, right? It is proportional to the, or inversely proportional to the depth. We already did that derivation as well as discussion in that direction. So we need to do some time gain compensation. So TGZ basically means it's just time gain compensation. Let me write that so that there are no uncertainties, there are no jargons that I'm using. So the name TGZ essentially means it is just sorry, the pen suddenly disappeared. Okay, so TGC basically means it is time gain compensation. Okay, so this, some people call it as depth also, because it is correlated, depth gain compensation. So whatever name you want to take it. So this is what happens. So basically what it does is actually you amplify signals so that the depth signal is also captured with some significant amplitude. And in a typical imaging system, you do have analog TGC. So this is ITGC, analog TGC, and you will have a digital TGC as well somewhere here or here. Okay, so DTGC also is available if you want to really consider. And digital, we know that it is very easy to amplify with depth, right, or amplify with time, because later time signals I can amplify because we are storing the data, and it's much easier than in the case of an analog TGC, where it's really difficult to, because what they do actually is, as the sensor time goes, you amplify it at a different amplifying or gain level. That's what typically they do, but they are fixed. Okay, so analog as usual, because we really can't program them, it is mostly fixed unless you have a variable capacitance or variable inductance, which is very rare in modern day systems, because you can do the digital TGC later. So analog TGC is a very primitive system where it's just a gain with depth. Okay, so that's what it is, and I hope it's important to know the significance of it. If you hear that term again in some other system, it's nothing but you are trying to amplify the gain with respect to time. So longer time may need to be amplified much higher than the earlier time, because the earlier time we are sure it's coming from a nearby space, so it is really not traveling that much distance, so it will not be attenuated that much. That's the idea. Okay, so that's the thing. And then we do have a low pass filter. So LPF is nothing, I'm just using a lot of jargons, maybe I'll write down here so that you know what is it. That just to make it abbreviation, it's easier, it's compact, right, rather than putting it everything here. So it's a low pass filter. So basically this is or more popularly known in analog world or digital world as anti-aliasing filter. So I'll explain it more detail in the next slide when we discuss about the sampling process. So this is just to prevent aliasing just before the analog to digital conversion. So some people call it as band limiting filter also. That is another way to look at it. Band limiting, that means the bandwidth you want to limit. So ideally speaking, an analog signal, if you take, it may spread. If you take the Fourier transform, the continuous Fourier transform of the analog signal, it may spread from minus infinity to plus infinity. It may never die off. But we can't do digitization of such a signal, so we need to band limit that signal to be, what I'm saying pictorially, something like, let's say the Fourier transform, if I take, it may extend. Signal may be something like this. Of course it will be concentrated more at one frequency, but then it may extend till minus infinity and plus infinity. So if that happens, then we are in trouble, because if you do the sampling process, this will get aliased, it will affect the signal to get distorted. So we need to band limit this signal, so you will pass it through a low pass filter, something like this. So this is obviously assumed to be 0, so there will be some band limited, so this part is all chucked off. So this bandwidth will help us in determining a sampling rate for the ADC. So that filter is very, very important. So you choose a sampling rate, and based on that you put a cutoff for this filter. So that's the idea. So the picture that you should get is, the low pass filter is a band pass or band limiting filter, not band pass, band limiting filter, which will actually make the bandwidth of the analog signal band limited. It should not extend from infinity to minus infinity to plus infinity. There should be some limit to it, so that I can sample that. Okay, so very important. Some of you might be getting that intuition by now, because we talked about the spatial sampling when I introduced the array of transducers as a discretization of a larger transducer, right? We can think of that way. That is spatial sampling. So here we are talking about is the time sampling, which is in the conventional sense. So in any signal processing class, it's like you introduced this concept earlier. So that's why if you're coming from any signals and systems background, you might be familiar with this concept, but it's worth looking into it, because still, even if you studied it, still people make a lot of mistake in this. So I want to spend some time, because very important that you choose a sensor or a receiver or an antenna system. The signal processing has to be really good, otherwise you will be, whatever you're getting will be a distorted data, and you will be playing with a distorted data, and that will not help you, right, in the imaging. So it's very important. So I hope it's pretty clear. So basically there is a TGC, time gain control, to basically amplify the weak signals coming from depth. Then you have an LPF, low pass filter, which is to band limit your analog signal so that you can sample it. Okay, so that's important, and the cutoff is determined by the sampling rate. So you'll get a better picture when we go to that equation and I explain that. Okay, so that's the idea. And then of course each of these channel data, each of these coming from the sensor, they are discretized at this point. Okay, so you discretize in time, you discretize in amplitude. That's what happens in analog to digital conversion. Till this time your signal was continuous in time and continuous in amplitude. So literally any value of time you take, any amplitude you take, it can support. But the moment you are in this space, it is a mere number, and there is actually some restriction on the time samples it can take. It can only take at some time point, it won't be existing at other time points. You just need to interpolate to find those values in the other time points. And the second is actually the amplitude also. You can't take any amplitude, it is discretized by the bit size that you choose. So for example, you may choose a 12 bit 50 megahertz ADC. So that means 50 megahertz is the discretization you do on the time, and 12 bit is the discretization that you do on the amplitude. Okay, so that's a literal meaning. We have detailed explanation coming up, so don't worry. Okay, so that's the thing. Okay, and then that discretized data, discretized digital data, we do the process, the very beautiful, the essential heart of an imaging system, the receive beamforming. So we'll have, in fact, this week, the rest of this week and maybe next week is dedicated to receive beamforming. So you'll understand that process in very deep. So we'll discuss that in that point of time. And then there are some auxiliary optional process which is needed. So most of the time after the beamforming, the signal content will remain something like the transmit frequency. Let's say you're sending a wave at 2 megahertz. So that 2 megahertz signal will, it's a damped sinusoid. You might remember, right? Why we damp is basically to limit the duration of the signal, right? Duration of the pulse, so that we can do imaging. So that still that signal, the received signal, even after the beamforming, it will have the content, the frequency content. But I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in the phase of the signal. I want that phase part to be away. So you can do an envelope detection on this particular received beamformed signal, and then you may want to do a log conversion also, that is to suppress the amplitude. Because for example, I will take an example to explain this concept. Let's say you are imaging as a tissue with a bone. Okay, so the bone reflects the signal. Always go back, the acoustic impedance mismatch created by bone is so huge that an ultrasound signal will get reflected from the bone and will have a very high amplitude compared to the tissue, the scattering, which is very very low in amplitude. So then what happens is, if I display the envelope, or even if the RF data, if I directly display, it will be dominated by the reflections from bone. So the smaller reflections will appear to be like dark, the image appears to be like very dark. Okay, so you want to avoid that. You want to reduce the dynamic range, you want to compress the higher reflections and to enhance the lower reflection. So you do a log conversion. So if I take log, all the extremely high values will come to a normal range, and the low values will always be increased to a higher range, so they become comparable and the image looks more appreciable. Okay, so that's the reason, and this is the primary reason we even express everything in dB scale, right? Because it is sort of log compression. Otherwise extreme because you're squaring the intensity most of the time. So if you square the any particular number, if that number is extremely high, it becomes very very high, much higher than earlier, and if it is extremely small, it becomes very very small, right? For example, if I take 0.1, if I square it, it becomes 0.01. On the other hand, if I take 2, it becomes 4. So to display it, particularly on a display unit, you want to actually compress that range. So for that we use log conversion. Okay, so this is optional, but we will have some discussion on this maybe later towards this course, because that's also worth noting it down, because many places it's extremely useful, not just here maybe, but in many systems it's extremely useful. Okay, so that's it. So this is the receive signal chain in a nutshell, and in this particular lecture we will be focusing more on this particular aspect, because the choice of ADC in this receive chain is extremely important, and you should understand this concept in a thorough manner so that you can make that choice. Okay, so let's move on. So what is analog to digital conversion? I am taking a sinusoid signal, a very perfect sine wave for illustration, but please remember that the signal need not be having this regular shape, right? Because it can be any regular shape, it can be damped sinusoid, something like that. So it doesn't matter, but just for illustration I am taking this example. So analog signal means literally any time sample that you take. Literally any time sample that you take, you can take this sample or this sample or this sample, it will have some value. It is completely continuous. It is not discretization. It's existent universally. The resolution is always, if you take the time resolution delta t, that is almost tending to 0. That is the concept. There is no gap at all. There is literally, you won't be able to, if you zoom in this plot, you will still get samples. That's the literal meaning of a analog signal when it is continuous in time. And similarly the amplitude also, it's same. If literally there is this division in amplitude is literally 0, that means any amplitude value, it will be like it won't be like discrete levels. It's not like 1 2 3. You can go 1.1, you can go 1.111, you can go 1.111. There is no limit. Okay, so that's the concept of this analog signal. Now we can't work with such data because we know that digital systems are bits, zeros and ones, and we may have a 32-bit system or a 64-bit system. So you are discretizing the amplitude. Okay, so basically we will discuss about that as well. So both aspects, sampling and discretization. So let's start with of course the discretization in time. That's mostly the first step that you do. So basically this is exactly that. So you are going to sort of only look at these time values. Okay, so at this point and this point, the remaining are going to throw off. So that is the loss that you're going to see in a digital system. Okay, so only those time instances I will have values. The other time instances, unfortunately, we will throw it out, and this particular gap is known as the sampling rate. Okay, so that's going to repeat. So that's your sampling rate. Okay, and the inverse of that is known as the sampling frequency. Okay, so that's the thing. So let's call this as, let's say, TS, and then Fs, the sampling frequency, is nothing but inverse of that, so sampling rate. Okay, so that's the basic understanding that you have. Okay, and then the same thing we apply to the amplitude also. Yeah, of course I need to show you what will be the result. So this analog signal, if I go with this discretization in time, I may end up in getting only these values, the ditto. So what we only have is at these time instances. So the remaining time instances, it's all 0. That's what you can see over here. Only some values are preserved, remaining is all 0. Or you can literally think of something like I'm multiplying this analog signal with this delta series, periodic delta series. I get this particular signal out. So that's the discretization in time. And similarly I can do discretization in amplitude, which means I'm going to divide this voltage range by some certain number of levels. That's in another sense it is known as quantization. So you do that, and then you literally end up in getting something like this. So you can actually see so many values here will take one value. So it's like you may have so many values that will get quantized, or that will get appear to be like one value in the result. And then if you combine both of them, what you get is actually is a digital signal. So that's the whole concept. Okay, so I hope it's pretty clear. So you discretize in time, so you discretize in amplitude, you get a digital signal out. So next time you hear a digital signal, I'm repeating this for the computer science audience here. So next time when you see a digital or hear about a digital signal, you always think that there is an analog counterpart from which I discretized the signal in time and amplitude and got this signal. So there is a heavy loss. So you are losing on the amplitude region, and you are losing on the time region, but if you do carefully, that loss can be minimized. So that's the idea. So we will discuss in detail about that in the next few slides. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so now this derivation, this part of it, you might have seen it before. Okay, so this is exactly similar to what we had in the derivation of spatial sampling, right? We started off with a single sensor, and then we discretized that single sensor. We assume that a transducer we are going to sample as sort of delta functions, and then we sort of derived finally that something which is very interesting relation, right? Because your spectrum, the spectrum is not going to change the shape. The spectrum will have the original shape, but then it is going to get replicated at different integer multiples of 1 by s, if you remember that particular thing. This is exactly similar. So we are going to derive this now for the temporal case, time series case. So I have an analog signal, and discretization in time, which is the sampling process, is nothing but something like multiplying, equivalent mathematically, model wise. This is, somebody asked me this question, what is this mathematical model, or what is that model, analytical model, that what it means. So this is an example. So sampling process here we are putting as a mathematical model. Okay, so you have an analog signal and you are taking few samples from this analog signal that is separated equally in time determined by the sampling rate, and this is equivalent, mathematically equivalent to an analog signal multiplied by a delta train, right? So that's the interesting, beautiful expression. So if you do that, you end up in getting this discrete time signal. So here amplitude discretization, we are treating it separately, even though when you do in an IDC this may be combined, there may be a sequence where it is combined and doing, but for mathematical treatment, for understanding the phenomena, we are treating it differently. So first is the sampling, where you are discretizing time or taking few samples in time, and this is equivalent to simple multiplication of your analog signal with a discretized time signal, okay, sampling signal. So that is the meaning of it. Okay, so now this is the expression. So I hope there is no confusion here. So y of t is your discretized time signal, that is equivalent to your analog signal x of t multiplied by the delta train. Okay, so that's understanding. Now this is interesting. So this particular thing, so let me actually derive it so that it's easier for you. Okay, so this particular thing I can express this as n equal to minus infinity to plus infinity tau of t minus nts. So I hope there is no confusion here, because delta of t is something like it exists only at t equal to 0, and I'm going to shift it in integer multiples of ts, where n is actually going from minus infinity to plus infinity. So this is a literal expression for g delta of t. Now if you observe carefully here, this is actually a a continuous signal, but it is actually periodic, right? So it's a continuous periodic signal. So what is the period here? Its period is nothing but ts, right? So this is a separation, so this is ts, that's getting repeated, the pattern is getting repeated after every ts interval. So that's the literal meaning of it. So this is a continuous periodic signal, and it does have a Fourier series. If you go back to the lecture on the Fourier transform, the quick lecture on the Fourier transform, so this is, sorry, let me just write it properly. Okay, so this is nothing but it does have a Fourier series. Okay, so Fourier series expression is exactly this. So if I take the Fourier series of this particular signal, it can be expressed in this particular term. Okay, so that's the concept. Okay, so let me just quickly derive how this is obtained. I'm sorry, just a minute. Okay, so there's no hurry, so it's fine. So basically if you remember this particular basically the general expression for Fourier series. Okay, so let's take some signal, okay, in this case g delta of t. So this is actually a continuous periodic signal, so we should be able to express this in terms of some Fourier series, right? So it is minus infinity to plus infinity Cn. This is the exponential formula that I'm going to put it. So this is basically j 2 pi by ts. If you go back to the formula, you will say 2 pi by p is what we put. Period is ts here, right? So that's the thing, and then you have n here, and then of course the t factor here. Okay, so that's it. So this is the Fourier series expression for this particular thing. Okay, so we need to find what is Cn. So we also know how to find Cn. It is actually by integrating over one period. So 1 by ts, this will be minus ts by 2 to ts by 2, only that, because it's periodic signal. So this is again inverse Fourier series. Okay, so if you go back and see, you will see this formula. Okay, so this is the thing, and then of course within that we know what is t n ts, n equal to 0, so it will be delta of t, and then of course this will be minus j 2 pi by ts n into t into dt. But this is a very interesting expression, because delta of t, we already know that it exists only at t equal to 0. So if I put t equal to this becomes 1, we know the value, and when t equal to 0, this entire thing will become 1, and then entire this summation, this entire thing inside will become 1, because at t equal to 0 this vanishes, this is 1, so the sum, I mean basically within that small area, delta of t is nothing but 1. We already know at t equal to 0 this vanishes, this will go, then the rest of them is nothing but 1. So this is nothing but 1 by ts. So you substitute that in here, so you get something like 1 by ts. I can take it out, so this is something like n equal to minus infinity to plus infinity e raised to plus j 2 pi by ts n t, and we know 1 by ts is fs, so it will be e raised to j 2 pi fs n into t, and that's what exactly written over here. So all we derived here is this g delta of t is a continuous periodic signal, hence it exists, there exists a Fourier series for it, and that Fourier series is given by this, is what we derived over here. So let me now erase all the I hope it's clear, so there is no problem. Okay, so just pause and see whether I'm doing anything wrong. No, so it's fine. So we just erase everything. Okay, so this is nothing but the Fourier series expression for this guy. Okay, so this guy can be expressed in terms of its Fourier series, something like this. now what we are going to do is we are going to take Fourier transform on both sides, because if you see over here this particular signal, which is actually y of t, it is not sort of periodic. There is something which is, or you can't really say it is repeating over and over for infinitely long duration, because when you sample the signal you only consider a small window. Okay, so what we are going to do is we take Fourier transform on both sides, so that is y of f, which is Fourier transform of y of t, and that is nothing but Fourier transform of x of t multiplied by Fourier transform of this guy. Okay, and we already know what is Fourier transform for x of t, so this will be something like, let me actually call, so put it this way, so Fourier transform of a product we can call, or make it equivalent to convol, right? Multiplication, the Fourier transform of that will be convolution of the Fourier transforms, right? So that's the idea. So then Fourier transform of this guy, so that is the concept. And then if I take Fourier transform of this guy, if intuitively if you see, this is like a full spreaded function, right? It's like fully occupying the spectrum or fully occupying in time. So then it will be like, or you can think of something like this is going to be a delta, right? In the, because in time when I took Fourier series it was like this, so if I take Fourier transform this again, it will be a delta function. So this will be equivalent to something like, I could say minus infinity to plus infinity. Okay, so 1 by ts obviously remains, and then this will be something like f in terms of Fourier series f minus nfs. Okay, so what I'm talking about is Fourier transform of this guy. So then effectively what I need to, if x of t, the Fourier transform is x of f. Okay, so then x of f convolved by this particular guy minus infinity to plus infinity dou of f minus nfs. If I do this, this is equivalent to 1 by ts, because I can move this guy inside. This is just a delta function, so all rest of them will remain same. So this will be something like x of f minus nfs. So very similar to what we derived for the spatial sampling of senses. So this is what you will get. Okay, so let me erase. I hope there is no doubt. I just derived it again because in case somebody didn't follow me in the spatial sampling case, it is exactly same, but we are doing in temporal, so that's the only thing. So what is the takeaway? This takeaway is again same. So what we get is actually is Fourier transform of the sampled signal, which is this, is equivalent to x of f, which is actually Fourier transform of the original analog signal, and it is getting replicated at integer multiples of fs. So that's the literal meaning. Let me reiterate it, please listen carefully. So what is the understanding from this is Fourier transform of the discretized time signal is equivalent to the Fourier transform of x of f is nothing but Fourier transform of the original analog signal. Okay, so the x of t, that is getting replicated at integer multiples of fs. So it's something like this. So let's say, yeah, so the now it is very important to know that suppose x of f, so literally let me draw it for you, just like I draw it for you in the earlier case. Let's say x of f is something like this. Okay, so this is x of f, and then this guy, this expression, because it is n value is changing, and you have 0 here, then you have fs here, then you have 2 fs here, and then you have minus fs here. Okay, so if I extend the minus 2 fs here and so on, so this was the original signal, okay, x of f. But then this formula says you that this guy is getting replicated at all the same spectrum, there is no change, it is just getting replicated at all these multiples. So this is n equal to 1, this is n equal to 2, this is n equal to 0, this is n equal to minus 1, and this is n equal to minus 2. So this is the graphical intuition of this. Okay, so now comes very important. So suppose this spectrum, this particular shape was not band limited. So let me actually use a different color to notate that. So this guy was not band limited, but it was expanding, it was shaped like this. Okay, so it extends till minus infinity to plus infinity. Then what would have happened here is all these curves, right, all of them will get interact. So these regions will get distorted, right, there's a lot of distortion happening, and that would have spoiled the spectrum. So it's very important that I may ensure that this x of f, which is nothing but the spectrum of your analog signal, is band limited. Okay, so it is having a bandwidth, and after that it is 0. So this portion doesn't exist for the signal. So this is the bandwidth for this particular signal. But none of the analog signal will be like that. We need to ensure, we need to have a signal processing way of ensuring that before you do the sampling process, before you do this before you select the sampling frequency fs, which is nothing but 1 by ts, sampling rate, we decide on the bandwidth of the signal. So you need to actually pass it through a filter, because filter is what kills frequencies, right? You allow only certain frequencies to pass through, you cut off all other frequencies. That is only achieved using a filter. So that is why if we go back to that chart, there was a low pass filter. I told you that is a band limiting filter, and the role of that filter is exactly to do this band limiting of the signal. Please understand this. Band limiting of the signal is extremely critical, and for that purpose we purposefully have a filter in front of the ADC. People call it as an anti-aliasing filter. The basic aim of that is to band limit your otherwise probably infinitely long, infinitely expanding analog signal. So that is the criteria. So again, I'll just put this across to you again once more. Okay, and then this thing you definitely know. Suppose I put a band limited signal, and the bandwidth is given by this particular expression or this particular extent. So one side it is b, another side it is minus b, so total bandwidth is 2 times b. So it's pretty clear that one thing is very clear, that the sampling process is going to introduce the images or the replicas of the spectrum at fs, multiples of fs. So the ideal scenario is the best scenario is something like a band limit, you put a low pass filter such a way that it is between this minus b, and then of course this fs. So let me make it very clear. This fs, this particular guy, is actually this b plus this b away. Okay, so that's why fs should be greater than or equal to 2 times b, where b is the bandwidth of your signal. So this is very fundamental, or one of the revolutionary ideas in electrical engineering, which revolutionized the way we are working now, because digital systems would not have been possible if this was not investigated. Okay, so we're thankful to the famous Nyquist, Shannon, and many other people were also associated with it. So if you search for it, you will see the entire history. I encourage you to do that. So this is the famous Nyquist-Shannon sampling theorem. You might have heard about this, you might have come across this, or if not, every digital system that you take will have a sampling frequency associated with it, and literally the meaning of that is, always remember at the back end that your signal spectrum is going to replicate at integer multiples of that frequency. So that is the literal physical intuition that should come to your mind. So you should ideally have your fs much greater than 2 times b, so that this can be separated out. So I have a graphical illustration in this case. So let's say you have this fs, 2fs, everything. So I just changed to small letter, doesn't matter much, but this is the bandwidth. Again, this is, instead of plus b minus b, I put it as plus minus f, just for sanity checking. So this guy is getting convolved with each of these. That is the literal meaning of the derivation that we did in the previous case, right? So it's going to happen something like, if fs is exactly equal to 2f, they sit nicely. pretty, there's no problem. If fs is 2 greater than, or if fs is way less than 2f, then the problem is they are going to interact with each other, and this is what typically people consider as aliasing. Okay, and this phenomena, I think I can guide you to one phenomena where you can easily observe this. You take your mobile phone, okay, so you take your mobile phone now, and then you try to record the video of your fan, and you will see that the fan will rotate opposite direction. Okay, interestingly, and that is because you are not sampling twice the rate of your velocity of rotation of the fan. So ideally speaking, if you want to exactly reconstruct the phenomena of fan rotation, you need to have a sampling rate, frame rate of your video, the camera, which should be twice the rotation of your fan. So if you decrease the speed of the fan to very small, you will be able to exactly follow it. The moment you increase the speed, let's say to 4 or 5, what you're going to observe is basically sort of this fan going in the reverse direction. So that's something I think you can always see that. You try to record it and then observe it, you will see that it's very difficult to actually exactly follow. Okay, so the aliasing is something which is very important, which gets your signal distorted, so it's important that you do the sampling correctly. Okay, so I hope it's pretty clear. Yeah, if you comfortably sample it, that is much greater than the bandwidth, then they are widely separated, there is no chance for any interaction between them. Now you go back and revisit our spatial sampling case, where we consider the one chunk of transducer. Instead of that, you divide that into an array of transducers. What is going to happen is exactly this. So only difference was this fs, instead of that it was 1 by s. Okay, so that's the, I just want to put that across because it's very often that people don't put it across correctly. So in the case of so fs is nothing but 1 by ts, don't forget that, and this is 2 by ts. So in the case of our sampling in space, we had 1 by s, right? This guy was 1 by s and this guy was 2 by s, and then of course this was minus 1 by s and this was minus 2 by s. So this is the concept. So very interesting, and it's like, so what is the takeaway? Very you forget the max, forget everything, but the important takeaway that should always stick to your mind is, like, whether you sample in space or whether you sample in time, what is going to happen is the original spectrum will remain untouched, there is no problem, but that spectrum is going to get replicated at integer multiples of your sampling frequency. Okay, very important. So if you don't choose the sampling frequency carefully, if you basically take a sensor spacing too high, then you are going to be in trouble, because your spectrums will start to interact with each other, and that will create lot of issues, lot of aliasing, and in spacing domain we call it as grating lobes. But fortunately here we have the phenomena of the anti-aliasing filter, where we have a control on, we can shape this particular spectrum such a way that the interaction can be minimized. But unfortunately we don't have a spatial filter, right? We don't have a spatial analog filter, so we won't be able to do it. One way to go about it is you shape the spectrum, shape the beam pattern of the individual transducer, which you can do by shaping the sensor, shaping the transducer, right? So that's one way to go about it. But ideally speaking, there is no equivalent of the anti-aliasing filter or the low pass filter that we have in the time, in the space, when we go to the space. So that's not there, but concepts is ditto same. So I hope you are able to appreciate it well now. Okay, so this is only sampling in time, but there is sampling in amplitude also, which is very important. That determines your bit resolution. So you might have heard about 8-bit ADC or 12-bit ADC or 16-bit ADC. So what does it mean? So basically you have an analog voltage. I'm sorry, I'm using basically many times. Okay, sorry. So the thing is, like, you have an input voltage which is an analog signal, and you really want to divide that, the entire range, the span of your signal, into equal divisions. That's what is quantization or discretization in amplitude means, right? So you have the analog signal, you have some signal, then you want to have this particular range, and then in that range you divide it into equal intervals. So if we have an 8-bit ADC, that means you can have 2 raised to 8 combinations possible. So this is roughly around 256 levels, if I understand, if my conversion is correct. That means this entire range, you are going to divide it into 256 equal levels. So if you have a 16-bit, that means you are going to divide it into 16 levels, so you have much finer resolution. That's what the meaning is. So what does then each of these samples, so let's say I have some value here. Okay, so let me use a different color for the explanation. Okay, suppose I have a value which is somewhere here. So what value should it go to? Shall it go to here or shall it go to here? So if you follow uniform quantization, then you basically you round off and then you either approximate this guy to here or to here. Okay, so that's the idea. Okay, so then that means you are basically sort of losing the in between value. So that's the error that you are going to have, and if you have 16-bit, that error will be lower compared to an 8-bit, right? So that's the idea. So we'll start with what is that range, what is the span, okay, of the ADC. So what is the voltage range that you should map to? So you may have an input voltage range going from minus 30 to plus 30 volt, but your digital system will be having only maybe minus 5 to 5 or 0 to 5 or 0 to 3.3, one of these ranges, right? So how shall I map that, this input range to output range? So what is the best? So if you consider something like this, so your original analog signal is blue color. If I choose a range of the mapping something like this, then this is not going to help because it's too small. What about this range is also too big because your the divisions here, right? Because you are going to divide your VR minus to VR plus into equal number of levels based on the bit size, but then these regions are wasted here because there's no signal at all, and signal is only in this particular range, right? So this is not a best fit there. So then what will happen is, ideally speaking, something like this will suffice, so that you are having a good range and that range is getting divided by the number of bits. Okay, so that's the ideal scenario. And then this is what I was talking about, the quantization error, which I already explained in the previous slide. So we are not going to go into much details of this if somebody is interested, because this itself is a huge area of depth, so a lot of things that you have to learn here, but I will stop here. So one important aspect is something like this. So let's say that range, you are fixing it, and then that entire range you are dividing it into some equal number of levels. So in this case it is only how many bits here? Only 3 bits. So that's why you have 7 levels here. So what is going to happen is, any value that you take, okay, so that value will get quantized to one of these values. So that's the problem. And let's say this particular, so it's easy to explain using, so this particular value in the original signal, after the quantization step, it will not exist because signal is no more analog, so it has to be quantized to here or here, but going by the rounding operation, this will go to here. So this is the quantization error, right? So this particular thing is the quantization error, because the original signal was here, but it will look like this in the final data. So there is already an error like this. So you want to reduce the quantization error, so one way to go about is increase the number of bits. So that is why people always say that higher the number of bits, it's always better for me, because the quantization error will get reduced. Okay, now the interesting aspect is like we can't really keep on increasing the bits, because 16-bit itself, you think it is a huge amount of data to store. So something like a typical ADC, a well used ADC may have 50 mega samples per second with 16-bit ADC. Okay, so this may be a standard specification. So you just imagine how many number of samples are coming. So 50 mega is nothing but 10 raised to 6. This many samples per second is coming, and they are of size 16 bits. So this many bits per second is actually coming from a single, this means 1 second this many bits are coming, this much bits is there. And then you think about, in the case of an imaging scenario where you have a bunch of sensors, array of sensors, so each sensor will be contributing to this per second. Okay, so that's the idea. So it's very difficult. It's a life which is not that easy as we generally think, particularly the computer science people, where you're working on a very high level algorithm. You are not really thinking about all these which are happening deep inside the system, right? So this is the beauty about it. So as a system on chip person, you should be well aware of these aspects. It's very important, and I hope I'm able to convey this message very clearly. So this if you take a typical course, they may not spend much time in these details, sampling and quantization, but since your background is very large, I thought I will introduce this concept so that you appreciate this part. Okay, so that's all from this particular lecture. So let me actually go back to this one important slide. So this part, so we discussed about these two aspects in some detail. So I hope you are able to appreciate these two concepts clearly now. So this is what we discussed in this lecture, and then next lecture I will introduce. So there will be only one more lecture because I don't want to load you with a lot of stuff. So I will introduce one very basic fundamental receive beamforming algorithm, which is the delay and sum receive beamforming in a very crude sense. So that's the next lecture which is coming up, but till then it's bye from my side. So keep coming back, keep enjoying the lecture series, and always post your questions. Okay, so see you in the next lecture. Thank you.